Good morning.
Ooh, good morning.
We think we.
Oh boy.
I got it.
Okay, we're good.
All right. Do you want to get started since we don't have a whole lot of time?
Yes, ma'am.
Roll call.
Somebody's unmuted.
Let me make sure. Yep, Joy's here.
Okay, we have Deb Muller, Kevin Penley, Dr. Raimundo, Amber Ryan, Mr. West, Rachel Hazel, John Cash, Angie Polite, and Dr. Nerick.
Okay, I'm here. Tracy Butler, Josh LeClaire, Joy Crome, Amy Hawkins, Beth Friedel, Paulette McKibben-Shed, Valerie Jessup, Yvette Lascano, and Paulette McKibben-Shed twice. Okay, so we're here. All right, so thank you for meeting with us this morning. I want to start with a question. So I'm not exactly sure what happened, but on Friday night, there was a press release that came out, and it stated, I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to paraphrase. It's just stated that there were proposals that were not accepted by VIEW, and the first two bullet points on the press release that said essentially were rejected related to the early release times and the ERPLs. And Rachel, we have this signed MOU. So am I understanding that we're not gonna work with this MOU now? Am I tearing this up, or what happened?
No, we are there with the early release dates. I think the references to the entire MOU that we've not settled on that.
But this was a standalone. So I just want to make sure that, when we send messages out, right? So this is not accurate now. So I just want to make sure that the people who read it, who are saying, oh my gosh, I thought we figured this out. There were only 6 days and we didn't have ERPLs, so that they know, no, that's a done deal. We already figured it out. So
that part is a done deal.
Okay, so I want to make sure, and I don't know how we get these messages put out, but just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay, because that's very concerning. All right, so we have a counter to share with you this morning. And so I'm going to just go right ahead and share my screen so we can get down to business. Sound good?
Sounds good to us.
Okay, great. All right, let me know when you guys can see it.
I can see it.
Okay, so we had discussed the last time. Is Barbara in? Barbara's telling me that she's having trouble getting in. So can someone work on that one, please? All right, so the last time we convened, we talked about starting to actually turn things black and for continuity purposes. So that's what we did when we went through here. The things that we had discussed and seemed to be in agreement on, we turned them black. All right, so you'll see that, the top, like we say every time we meet, the top is always the same. So we're still the same. And so ABC, we're all good there. D, so with D, I know that, it's stricken and we will leave it stricken, but we just wanted to make sure, that we addressed that our purposes and intents were to have a standalone sick leave bank just for the purpose of COVID, but we understand that that's not the desire of the district, so that can in fact go away. In E, we are still wanting to make sure that we afford our employees the option if they choose to. Now remember, this is a choice that folks would have here to preserve their terminal leave. And we know the importance of terminal leave because we're discussing that in another area here. So all we're asking for here is to give employees a choice. If, more than likely, if somebody has to go out beyond the additional 5 days that the district has offered, more than likely, if I was going to assume, they probably would take their sick days because who can go without a check? But if for some reason they can afford to let them sit and build them as an additional part of their retirement, that's all we're asking for here. So not to belabor that point, we're going to keep going. Unless you have questions. Good.
No, the only thing that I see on there as far as C goes, you don't want to base the need to quarantine on an intake interview whatsoever. Because like, to me, honestly, the reason we have the intake interview in there based on a doctor's recommendation or the intake interview is because that would afford more opportunities for our employees to protect themselves than for those people who don't have to go to a doctor.
Well, we had the conversation on Friday, and I know that was many days ago, but we had the conversation on Friday, and I believe we went back and forth and decided that if we had a doctor's recommendation, that would be sufficient. We talked about the fact that
I understand that. I'm not opposed to somebody having a doctor's recommendation at all, but I don't want that to be their only opportunity. So what we were saying is a doctor's recommendation or the intake interview.
If we're going to do the
if they don't have a doctor's recommendation, then are we saying they can't quarantine and qualify for this?
That's not what we're saying at all. That's not what we're saying. We had concerns with the content of the intake interview. And so, I mean, we could even take out based on a doctor's recommendation if you wanted to.
Well, we can't not have some kind of checks and balances. So we're not opposed to having a doctor's recommendation in there, but we have a process that gives us the checks, and so that people don't just come up and say, well, I need to quarantine, I need the 5 days, and we don't have some kind of documentation. We have to have that for FFCRA purposes. But if the only method is to have a doctor's recommendation, and maybe I'm not saying this the best way, but if the only way I can utilize this leave is if I go to a doctor, I think that's very limiting to our employees. We also need that intake.
I get what you're saying, but in B above, right? In B above, we state that we are going to follow the guidelines of the FFCRA according to the way that mechanism is set up.
And that mechanism is set up to have a doctor's recommendation. If we also allow them to use these additional 5 days based on our own intake interviews, that's better for the employees.
I see what you're saying, but Tracy.
Well, here's what we would do. We need to bring that intake document into this discussion, because that intake document had some questions on there that we did not agree with. So we would need to bring that into the document. And we are not limiting. We're not saying we want to limit. We're not saying we only want to use a doctor's note. We're just saying that we felt that the intake form was overreaching. And so there were questions on there that gave us cause for concern.
Okay, I would need to know what those questions are, but that's exactly what this says, is that they have to have our doctor's recommendation.
Well, it says based on a doctor's recommendation. It doesn't say that, and a doctor's recommendation, I mean, shoot, we've got people that are sharing that they've been exposed, that are being told, well, come on back into work. I mean,
well, and a doctor's recommendation doesn't necessarily mean that it's in writing. I mean, if I call my doctor and say, I'm not showing symptoms, but I just got a positive test, or, so of course the positive test results would work. But if I call my doctor and say, I'm running a fever, I've got the cough, I think I could have this, and he say, well, just go ahead and quarantine for 14 days and only come in if you start to get in a desperate situation. Then to me, that's a doctor's recommendation. I call you and say, just got off the phone with my doctor. He recommends that I quarantine.
We have to have some kind of checks and balances.
So how does the process work when an administrator calls Ms. Fisher and says, yeah, send him home? Is that sufficient? Is Ms. Fisher a doctor? Is she a doctor?
She has an intake. She has medical credentials, which I'd be happy to get for you if you would like those. But however, and she is certainly qualified for her position, but she's basing that on the intake form, which she worked with the Department of Health to do. She doesn't send that intake form over to me. Nobody sees that beyond her office. What she does is ask very specific questions to determine the need for quarantine or not. And then she sends to my office Rachel Hazel will be cleared to return to work on such and such a date if either like, and she'll give very specifics, like either I need to get a negative test or I'm cleared on this date, or on how many days of leave to approve. So, and then I work with the employee to determine, is this FFCRA leave? Is this sick leave? What kind of leave do we want to take? So that information is not widely shared. As far as like, I don't see it. I don't know what the answers to the questions are.
And I appreciate that if you view that the way C is presented here, if you view that as limiting, I appreciate that you pointed that out, because that is absolutely not our intent. We do not want to limit anyone from accessing this administrative leave that we've been able to agree after many sessions is appropriate to offer. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just looking, I finally found the questions, and I can identify the few that we have a problem with. When were you exposed? That's a question that would cause a person to speculate. Where do you think you were exposed? Again, a speculation. The word think is even in that one. Were you wearing a mask and PPE while at work?
Okay, I can answer each of those because I've had some pretty in-depth discussions with Ms. Fisher. If we don't know when they were exposed, then we don't know how long to recommend the quarantine. And so that is critical information as far as like, if I know I was in contact, and I can give you very specific examples. If I have a cousin that has been tested positive with COVID, and the last time I saw them was last Saturday, then that Saturday starts the clock ticking. However, if the last time I saw them was yesterday, then the clock starts ticking based on yesterday. So there's a significant difference in how much leave they're going to have to take if we don't ask them when they were exposed. Go ahead.
No, I know that there are inconsistencies. And again, we don't want this to limit, but we don't want this to set anybody up for the outcome that, well, no, you're not going to be able to qualify for this based on some of the questions. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want these questions being used for other decision making. And I believe that the questions that I just pointed out could be used in a manner that would be harmful to an employee. Even I see what you're saying about the when were you exposed, thinking that they would actually know that. But if I am a teacher and I've been teaching there for 2 weeks and you ask me when I was exposed, beats the heck out of me. I've been back at school, and this is, and this is what I end up with. I don't know when.
And that is an acceptable answer. These are questions. To say I don't know is an acceptable answer for that question.
Okay.
We're not asking anybody to say, well, don't we want to know if they were exposed at school, at home, out?
I don't know that we're allowed to ask that, are we?
Well,
these questions were given to us by the health department. So
where do you think you were exposed is a very, I think I was exposed in the classroom because I've been here for a week and a half now. So what do you mean, where do you think you were exposed? And the word think is even in there. It leads a person to have to guess at their answers, and they're going down on this sheet to make a decision about future, about leave, and in my opinion, probably other future things.
So I think we're looking, this is a little bit, and we can move on from this, but one of the issues here is, what are the purpose? So like when I hear you answering these questions, I hear this from a case of somebody who's tested positive. Like, I have a positive result. We're not going through all this if you've got a positive result. This is if I was exposed. So if I'm coming to you, to the nurse, and saying, I was exposed. If I'm saying I was exposed, then why wouldn't I know when I was exposed and where I was exposed? Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to say I was exposed. If you have a positive test, it's not going, you were obviously exposed. So there's no need to go into that.
the scenario you're speaking of is very limiting as well, because it says that I know that I was exposed to someone with it. So yes, that's a different scenario. I know that I had a cousin. I saw them last week, and then they came up 2 days later. Yes, that's a
But
very.
if you don't know the
definitive.
answers to where you were exposed and when you were exposed, how do you think you were exposed?
My point is there's the people in the middle who just are coming up, and they have a symptom. They're running a fever and they have a cough. They haven't been around anyone. Yes, there are a party of people who are going to say, oh shoot, I just found out my uncle that I saw last week has it, or I've been to the doctor and I have a positive. But there's those group of people in the middle who aren't going to have that, and we're leading them to guess.
No, that group of people in the middle that you're talking about that are symptomatic, there's a whole different set. Now they will ask them, do you think you were exposed? Where do you think you were exposed? But if you're symptomatic, that's a whole different clearance level than just going through this intake interview. The symptomatic they are sent and told to get a test or to quarantine for the full number of days.
And so how would a symptomatic individual access the 5 days based on what we're creating here? I mean, is that just a green light automatically?
Yeah.
Do we need to write that in there too? Do we need to include that now that we're having this deeper conversation?
It's the same. It would be the same outcome. They would still be told either to quarantine or go get a negative test, and they would qualify for the 5 days automatically. The end result for them would be the same.
So that's why maybe we do need to retool this language to more clearly identify the intent that we've just discussed. So maybe it needs to be cleaned up for both of us then, because when we talked about it on Friday, it seemed that we had landed on in a place where we were both in agreement. But it sounds like now that the way you're reading that, it seems limiting to you, and through the further discussion that we've had, we've uncovered that there does need to be a little bit more.
The only thing that is limiting to me is
doctors.
We don't want to take out the process by which we can also assist people with quarantining and assist them with utilizing the leave based on our protocols that we already have established. That's what's limiting to me in this, is that this gives employees one outlet for which they can quarantine, and that's to go to the doctor. And in our protocols, we have several different ways. And if they follow those protocols, which include that intake interview, then they can utilize this time.
All right, well, let's move on if you're ready to move on, and then we can, we'll move.
Okay, we're fine. Yeah.
I'm glad though that we had this discussion here to get to have the opportunity to share where we are. All right, so Volusia Live, we're ready to go here. Okay, so we had a discussion on Friday about blending seniority and volunteers. We had a real good talk there about, so we just moved it into one line, and I believe that that was part of what we had discussed.
Yeah,
okay,
that's fine.
All right, at B, this is where we've had a bit of a bump. And so what we have offered you here is just to default to the waiver language. So at each secondary school, the implementation of Volusia Live shall follow the waiver process as articulated in the CBA Article 11 waiver procedure. And we just struck everything below that. And, okay. We talked a lot about the waiver in conversation, so we just are now proposing that there. In C, we are still asking that if bargaining members are going to have to teach 2 classes simultaneously, face-to-face and Volusia Live, that they receive a stipend. We are very committed to that. 2 jobs shouldn't be paid. 1 job should be enough. And then all these other items, and we had agreed on. Class, you're nodding, we're good. I'll give you a minute to read through there or tell me when.
If there's no changes, we were good.
There weren't any changes. Okay. All right. So we had talked a lot about SLPs. And so what we did with the SLP was we just took the same language that we had agreed upon under Volusia Live, but just specific to SLPs, because their job is different than a rostered classroom teacher as far as the services that they provided. And the reasoning here was, and I'm going to roll back up, If it works up here, right, it should also work for these members of the instructional bargaining unit as well. But they're not elementary classroom teachers. So that's why we just separated them out.
Okay.
Okay. Volusia. So this one, again, we've always been asking for the option, for the choice to work remotely if they are quarantined. We know based on the outcome of yesterday's lawsuit that they are not required to be on campuses. So that's what this is. We just changed the word in L from videotaping to recording. I don't know that that's going to be a big hurdle, but I wanted to keep it red just so you would see that we used, because videotaping is one method, but what about audio? You know, so that's why we chose recording.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, this was all the same here. Cleaning and safety, we know that training is pretty much completed. So we just have the district shall implement all safety protocols as per the CDC guidelines. Okay. This B is the same. C, this again, the top part of C is the same, and we just want to make sure that we articulate that temperature checks are not a supplemented duty. Instead of having as long as necessary, in D, we have inserted for the duration of this MOA. I believe we talked about that on Friday, so I'm hoping that's not a big deal. In F, we again are just wanting to articulate that bargaining unit members shall not be responsible for the sanitation of the classroom. We've had conversations about what is included in the cleaning supplies as far as the chemicals. We've had conversation about taking from the large containers and putting into unlabeled squirt bottles. And we've talked about, you know, how is class time going to be provided? Do the kids do it? We're just, it's all over the map. So there's a little bit more work that needs to be done there. In G, we had talked about on Friday using the word resolved, and once we explained resolved, our understanding on Friday was that it was then okay. So we just reverted back to resolved, and we turned the time period black. It was red on Friday, but we I believe the conversation was agreeable to the 24-48 hours. So that's why we've turned that black there. Okay, everything else, H, I, J, we agreed to. I'll leave it there for a second if you want to scan it.
Okay.
Okay, and in K, we added the AAP guidelines because what we've heard over and over again is the reopening plan is based on the CDC and the AAP. So we are just asking that they be clearly identified in the document. Again, where practical, we either do it or we don't. So that's why that's still out. Excuse me, still out. We are still wanting to know, and we believe it is appropriate to ask for a list of weekly positive cases by location. We have walked it back from our original ask when we had asked about adults versus students, but we want to know where these things are occurring and how often. We believe it is, we believe that employees and parents have the right to know what's going on in our schools. They do not have the right to know who is quarantined or positive, but we do believe that we have the right to know what is happening in our public schools. And so that's why we have continued with that language here. Brick and mortar is, I think, the same as it was on Friday. And the retirement incentive. So I'm going to skip this for now, go down to the bottom and then come back to this because this is where Matt will. Is that okay? Do you mind doing
that's fine.
it? All right. And then so for evaluations, we are committed to ensuring that the evaluations have no negative impact on our bargaining unit members. So we again are asking that they be utilized as training exercises, both for the bargaining unit members and administrators. And you know, I think this is really important because you and I have had conversations, Rachel, about how one of the outcomes that will occur with COVID is probably a permanent change to education, the way we look at it. I don't believe that once COVID goes away, we will fully go back to the traditional method of educating kids. I believe that there will be some takeaways from COVID that we continue to utilize, and perhaps technology is part of that, particularly when our district becomes one-to-one, which I know is the intent of the board. And so if in fact that's the way we go, we may need to really develop some good practices of how to evaluate our members, our instructional members and support members using technology. And this time could be the opportunity to practice and develop those skills. So that's why it's important for us also, for the administrators, to have an opportunity to use this time as a training exercise. Good on that? Are you good there?
We're gonna talk about that. I want to be careful how I say. I understand what you put.
Okay. All right. It's not new. I mean, it was there before, but I just was sharing again the backstory. Okay. So so when we met the last time and we talked about ESE case managers and related service providers and the expectations for them, my recollection was that we were waiting on feedback from Ms. Wiles, and I don't believe that that was shared. So that's why this is still there. I believe the conversation was she was checking on some things and was going to get back with us. So that's why we've kept this, because we didn't get the response we were looking for. Volusia Online, it is important to us to have the caps here. So that's why we've left that. And now we can go back to retirement unless you have any questions otherwise.
No questions.
Okay, Matt, if you're ready, we can talk about this.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead.
You ready, John?
So I took a look. First of all, thank you for the terminal leave. That was actually extremely helpful. But I took a look through the last two district proposals, the one of 15% with no drop, and then the one of 17% with no longevity and no drop. And like I was saying the last time we were meeting, and I had to do it quick last time because it was in the live meeting, but now that I had some time to look through it, when the district offered us 15% with no drop, the total cost was $4.09 million. And so then we countered with our 17.5%, which brought us up to over 6 million. And then the district came back with 17%, but no longevity and no drop, which actually lowered the offer to 3.82 million. So I guess what I noticed is that like the value was about $300,000 less as like a recounter offer. So like I get that you said like you're coming up to our 17% or getting close to our 17.5%, but the actual like total impact was less money because of the longevity. Second thing, in terms of the terminal leave, it's expensive. I know you've been saying that, but the terminal leave is extraordinarily expensive. But the terminal leave for the drop people is actually, you said it's already been budgeted. And so that's why the document you sent me had no terminal leave for drop people. So when we add them back in to our retirement incentive, as long as we're below 17%, they don't cost the district any extra money. They just save money because terminal leave has already been budgeted, and under 17%, their salary offset savings is more than their bonus would cost. So I don't understand why we keep trying to eliminate the drop people when their terminal leave has already been budgeted.
Okay. Let me answer the second one first. So the second one is you're saying, okay, yes, we do budget for terminal leave. However, we also budget for the savings. So that's what I'm saying. We budget for savings because we know that we're going to replace those teachers when their drop is done, as well as we know that we're going to have terminal leave. We always have terminal leave, but those are the people that we can ascertain are definitely going to retire. So we already have budgeted savings less the terminal leave.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And then your first question was regarding that the offer was actually less. again, when the terminal leave is a cost, this is a cost to the district that we do not anticipate. Okay, we know when people are going to retire for the most part, if they're in drop, we do. If they have 30 or more years, we don't know when they're going to retire. And when I sent you the actual expenditures for last year, you could see that we paid out more money than we had budgeted. So, you know, we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, clearly you guys have all been following the news. You know, there was the injunction, then there was the new suit, and it's all tied to funding. I mean, the district our hands are tied, and FEMA is not giving us money for PPE. I mean, I don't want to do this at all, quite honestly, if I had a choice, because I'm scared to death about what's going to happen financially to all our school districts. I mean, it's the unknown. It's the big black hole financially right now. So I'm not going to go back and forth and argue about $300,000 and say, well, that's a savings for you, because there is no savings in my view right now. And I'm doing the best I can in trying to help teachers that want to retire because they don't want to come back and teach. That's the whole point of this. We would not even be discussing this if it wasn't for COVID and it wasn't for the situation. But other than that, we would never have entertained a early retirement incentive this year. So, you know, I'm sorry to get like on my soapbox again, but I can't say it enough that you can tell me that it's going to be another $1 million of savings, and I'm still telling you we're paying out more than we anticipated, and we don't have the money.
Okay. And then, so I understand that you're paying out more this year because of that big hit for terminal leave. But my question is, so if you pay it out more this year, and again, I understand there's funding discrepancies for this year, but by paying out a larger lump sum this year, it's almost like a Band-Aid, in that in future years, one, you have lower salary costs, and two, you're going to have less terminal leave because a lot of people took it this year. So it's a big lump payment today, which is the whole idea of the incentive, to save millions over the long run. So I guess like looking at the financial health from like a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan, like I don't understand, like, other than the financial discrepancies this year, but there's a lot of money to be saved over 10 years. And so that was my thing is, and also the terminal leave is.
Can I just say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but, and I'm not just saying this to you, Matt. I'm not, that wasn't just for you. It's for just everybody to understand, because I appreciate your analysis that you've done with this, and I understand, and there is long-term savings, but we always anticipate that we're going to have savings. The other thing is we haven't even begun to negotiate the teacher salary allocation and what that's going to mean for the district. So, there are just too many unknowns at this point in time. And it's clearly going to cost us more money to employ teachers this year when we hire them, and then we apply these increased base salaries for teachers, new teachers. So it's just, we can't do anymore. And whether it's, $3 or $300 or $3 million, it's still a cost to the district that we don't have the funding right now. We haven't balanced our budget. And in Florida, we don't know from year to year what our revenue is going to look like. The fact of the matter that the legislature has held down our property taxes from us collecting more money because they keep lowering the required local effort. Nobody else has that requirement but school districts. The county, they can raise their taxes to collect more tax money. The cities, they can raise their taxes to collect more tax money. We are at the complete and total whim of the legislature and politics and what goes on from year to year. And now we're under the COVID umbrella. So, for us to say, well, it's going to be savings down the road, what happens in the legislature is when they see that school districts have more money, that they're just going to find another way to take it away from us. That's the reality of districts in Florida, that we don't know our funding from year to year. One year at a time is how we function. And it's very difficult to operate in that environment.
So I just need to ask a couple questions and just say something. You know, I heard you say a couple things, Deb, and I understand that, you know, when we talk money, we're always coming at it from different sides of the table. I get that right out of the gate. I know that. But I heard you say that you didn't want to do this at all, and there were no savings in your view. Yet Matt's been able to demonstrate over the course of a period of time, and even within a short window, 2 to 3 years, the residual savings that will be afforded to the district. And you talked about the Teacher Salary Act. That money has been identified and sent down for us to bargain with. That money is there. So I'm glad to hear you say that maybe you're considering adding more from the BSA or the general fund to supplement what we've been given by Governor DeSantis. So that's encouraging. But I continue to hear why we can't, when we should be thinking in this time about how we invest in our people, particularly our people who have dedicated their entire lives to working in Volusia County schools and being good and steadfast and true employees to get the business done that we are here to do, which is teach kids. And now in this time where they're looking to the employer to try to find a way to help them exit so that they can remain safe and have some dignity, I hear that there's just this overwhelming resistance to do it because one spreadsheet doesn't show what the other one shows. And I find that to be troubling.
Okay, so I'm not sure what you mean by 17% is not a good faith offer, first of all, Elizabeth. And second of all, I've explained it many times that I'm worried about this year. I understand their savings, but there will be teachers that retire regardless without a bonus, that the district will have savings. And I did not say that the district is willing to put in additional money for negotiations. So please don't put words in my mouth. What I said was that we have to negotiate the teacher salary allocation piece, the 20%, and you know that. So we're not negotiating right now over that. So please don't put words in my mouth and tell me that I don't care about teachers, because I care about all our employees and I'm doing the best I can, but we also have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of this county. So please do not tell me that I don't care about people. And when we've offered 17%, that's nothing.
But we pointed out, Matt pointed out, using the numbers that were provided by the district bargaining team, how the 15% with the longevity was actually a better offer than the 17% without the longevity.
You can make a counter if you want. You know, I've explained it.
Okay. So if Matt, anything else? David, anything else on the retirement?
No. No, thank you.
Okay. All right, Rachel, that's the totality of what we've got for you today. Would you like me to send it over so you guys can caucus?
I would like for you to send it over to caucus, but before we caucus, because I'm afraid that our caucus might run us right into the time, and I just want to have a little bit of a discussion about something quickly, and that is kind of where we go from here. I know we have dates set up for the rest of the week, which is fine, and we can take this language and go through, and I'm feeling like the last couple of times we've made a little bit of progress on both ends. So I definitely see that. And I see that although the process is slow, and I know that you get frustrated and I get frustrated, we're coming to a consensus. But I do want to bring up, and I feel obligated to, just for those teachers that are hanging in the balance of, do I retire, do I not retire? Do we want to separate out the retirement incentive and concentrate on getting that signed as a separate document from the language? Because we do have people that are waiting, and I don't want to leave them out waiting any longer. And I know that you were pretty emphatic the last time that you did not want to separate it out, but I just feel obligated to offer that again.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because let's talk about where we are, generally speaking. There are some issues that I think we could say that we've reached agreement on. Absolutely. We've got more black on this document than we've had in all the other documents that we have worked on so far. But there are definitely some places where we're not there. And so we know the clock is ticking. We know that school is supposed to start on Monday for kids and that our folks are actually already in the classrooms. So, or with pre-planning. So my question to you is, right now, do you want to agree on what we can agree on and then say that we are where we are with the other items? Or do you believe that we are going to be able to move forward with these other hurdles? Because I right now I'm not even sure about the retirement incentive based on what I just heard.
Well, that question is not one I'm comfortable answering without caucusing, to be honest with you, as far as the totality of the language. But what I would like to know as far as moving forward, we can use our caucus time today to look at the document as a whole, or we can look at this offer from the retirement incentive and bring you something back before we close today to try to come to some kind of agreement. I just am worried about those people who are waiting to make a decision.
I agree with you. And we've got a lot of,
I guess that, I mean, we can look at, if you want us to caucus right now and come back with just a retirement counter, we would be willing to do that and then bring our counter for the rest of it tomorrow. Is it whenever we meet again? Is it tomorrow?
Why don't you guys caucus and then we'll come back and we'll just close it out after we do a caucus. So we're supposed to end at 9:15, and I believe that's probably because we have the board meeting at 10.
Right.
Yeah. So why don't we, how much time do you think that you'll need for your caucus?
Well, it depends on what you want us to do. If you want us to break out that retirement part and bring a counter back for that, we would need probably 15 minutes.
I think you should do what you feel is in the best interest for you. I'm not going to tell you what to do.
Okay.
But, we'll meet back at what, 9?
9 o'clock. Very good.
Is that enough time for you?
Yes, just make sure you send us that. And I'm sorry, Deb, did you need something else?
Stuff.
Oh, Matt stuff. Could you send us Matt stuff too?
I don't know that Matt has any stuff. I think he just looked at what Deb sent and, made some observations.
Okay. Okay.
We just have the language, so I'll send you the language.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay. We'll see you at 9.
Thanks.
I need a second to do the room. I'm sorry.
No problem. I'm going to email this over.
Email it to me as well, please.
Sure will.
All right, everybody should have it.
Okay, I think we're back. Are we back?
We are back.
All right. So we did, thank you for the time. We even finished a minute early, so we're pretty excited about that. We did decide to go in, and what we would like to present with you is a proposal separate from the rest of the language that just addresses the retirement incentive. And then, so if I can share my screen, I'll show you what I have on that. That's me talking. I hear me talking. I don't know if the live, I just need permission to share my screen, and I'll show you what we have on the retirement incentive. And then I want to talk through a different option, because we have two different options that we could share with you, and depending on which one looks good. All right.
And can you email it over as well?
Absolutely. Okay, so my screen should be up, and I can't email while I'm.
I understand.
I mean, I probably can, but I don't know how.
No,
Let me say that. Okay.
I get it.
All right, so this is the top language that never changes. And then for the retirement incentive, we have that for this school year. We did leave in if the employee is in drop, they must not be in drop for more than 36 months, and the eligibility criteria would be a 17%. One of the things we did change, though, is that top date to September the 14th to give people a little bit more time, because right now we would be looking at 5 days for them to decide. And so we did change that to the 14th, and we changed the receipt of notice to September the 14th as well, just to give the employees that are in these categories more time. What we wanted to talk to you about, and then the rest is the same with the signatures if we decide to separate this out. What we did want to talk to you about is the longevity piece. And so basically, and Deb's going to jump in here and correct me, I'm sure, if I say anything incorrect, but if we were to include the longevity piece, then we could offer 15%. So we would be open to 15% with the longevity, or 17% across the board. And that really, we would want to hear from you which one would be seems better to you.
Okay, well, it looks like what you've sent over is just the same thing as what you sent before with the 17% no longevity. So the formal proposal is not the 15 with the longevity. So I think this is where we're at, right? Because we can't allow our folks to
I am willing to do a formal proposal very quickly. It would take me less than a minute to give you a formal proposal with 15% with the longevity, if that is what your team prefers.
Well, the thing about it is, we want to agree to something that affords our folks a full and complete opportunity. And this right here in front of us doesn't. So we can't agree to that. And I don't know if that was the intention, why maybe one wasn't typed during the caucus. I get it that we're all scrambling and trying to do stuff, but I think the bigger picture here is that that we're having a hard time agreeing on some very basic things, sum total. And as we said before, the clock is ticking. Even with the retirement piece, right? It's a continued, well, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this, where we can't just go right to what is the best package right out of the gate. And people are waiting. People are waiting not only on the retirement, but they're waiting to know what they're going to do with Volusia Live. They're waiting to know about what's happening, generally speaking, in our schools. And because for some reason the board and the district can't seem to say yes to these basic things, I don't know that we're ready to go forward and we're ready to even open our schools on Monday. So, you know, the district is now no longer bound by the terms of the emergency order. There is no financial penalty that is going to be imposed if one thing doesn't, you know, if we don't reconvene brick and mortar. We know that there is now a freedom that has been provided to take some bold steps to make sure that the employees are prioritized. And I'm not really seeing that right now. So at this point, I would ask you, are you willing to sign off on the areas that we've agreed upon? Because otherwise, I don't know that we can go any further. I don't know that we're going to continue to make progress the further we continue to wait and have 2-hour meetings here and 2-hour meetings there.
Okay, so let me answer this way. Those areas in which we've agreed upon, are we willing to sign off on? I think we would, but I thought I was pretty clear about the purpose of our caucus was to come back to you with a retirement incentive, because to me, this is the most time sensitive, as we have people that are waiting for this. So we did not use our caucus time to go through and pick out those things which we'd agreed upon, but I am certainly willing to go through and pull out those things that we've agreed on and sign off on those items. We are willing to do that. I think that
well, let me, just for clarity's sake, this whole thing with the drop not being more than 36 months in drop, we're not agreeable to that. We've talked about, we want to include everyone who is in drop. So are you saying that your proposal would include the option for all retirement eligible employees?
No, our proposal is what's written there, whether it's at 15% with longevity or it's at 17% with longevity. And we hear what you're saying, Elizabeth, but we also have to make sure that it's financially feasible for the district. And that's what Deb was trying to say. And that there are two scenarios that could be financially feasible for the district to offer an incentive for retirement. One of them is what is written here. The other one is 15% with the longevity. And we are willing to do either one of those, but that's really all we can do. So if one of those proposals would be acceptable to you, we'll send it over now.
Well, it's not going to be acceptable if we exclude folks from it. And so financially feasible for the district doesn't equate to a good financial deal for the folks who are in drop. And
exactly.
So we cannot agree to anything that is going to diminish or hurt our folks. You know,
this isn't an incentive. This is just a escape plan, if you will. Let's recall it what it is, because you're trying to me, I hear we aren't going to, we can't have anything that's not close to cost neutral. We want to balance the budget on the backs of the now retired people who need to retire. To me, I feel like this is this is not an incentive. This is an escape plan.
So do you want to relabel it? Because it says retirement incentive. So it is an incentive for those who want an early retirement. I don't.
Well, but let's face it though, if they're retirement eligible, they could retire right now anyway. What we were trying to do was to provide them a mechanism to retire with some dignity based on the fact that they have very significant concerns about their health and safety going back into our schools, because at this point, there's been no allowances or consideration to have these folks, whether they have a medical condition or not, to work remotely. So there has been no consideration. And so we were trying to get them some kind of package that would help them through if they went out early, that would be mutually beneficial, not only to the employee, but to the district. But we can't allow them to take a deal that is going to not provide a good plan, not provide them, a decent way out.
Well, and we understand that, but however, drop is also an incentive, and it also provides them. So if they're already in drop, they're already getting that incentive, and then on top of that, I mean, this is not we're not offering them anything. We're offering them 17% or 15% with an additional incentive for longevity. So if that's not acceptable to view, then we just need to know so we can move on with the language part of it.
So
but what we're saying is this is what we are prepared to offer.
Okay, so so the 15 with the longevity would be acceptable if it was offered to everyone in drop. If that exclusive language with the more than 36 months is removed, then we would accept that. But we can't exclude our folks that have more than 36 months in drop. We can't agree to that. It has to be for all of them. We can't agree to leave people out. And, you know, let's think about the deficit that it's going to create in our school sites too, right? Let's talk about what's good for kids. These are folks that have been here. These are our master teachers. These are the folks that know how to teach. These are the people with pedagogy for years and years and years, developed pedagogy. And so it's going there's going to be a gap that's created when these folks go. So we have, if that's the case, we need to be considerate of them, and we need to make sure that we thank them and value them for all the years of service that they've given to us and our children.
So I agree with that. So then that might mean the longevity piece of it, rather than.
But what I'm saying is to cut people out is not appropriate. So we need to open it up to all of them. If you open it up to everybody, and we can do the 15 with the longevity.
If we open it up to everybody, then we're going to need to lower the percentage.
Well, we can't agree to a package that's less, particularly when Matt has shown you what the cost savings will be using the numbers that have been provided from the district. Okay. It's an investment in people who have invested in Volusia County schools over the years. How do we not invest in the people who've given their all for us?
So even separated out what we're hearing, this is not acceptable. So
not if we're excluding people.
Okay, do you want me to send this over as a separate document, or do you prefer to just?
Yeah,
I guess so. Yeah, you can send it, please.
Okay.
But I think we need to have this conversation now. So I think that we are at the point of saturation. I think that I think that we're at the point where continuing to meet for drip pieces and chunks of time is not producing any fruit. I think that we have done all of the to this point, and it is now time to decide if we're going to agree on what we agree on and TA those items, and then move the rest of the process forward to the next step. We recognize again, we've said it all along, we recognize that the clock is ticking. We recognize that people are left in a state of panic and frustration and anxiety because they just don't know what's going on. So at this point, I would like to let you know that we really don't believe we're going to be able to go any further.
Okay.
So are you agreeable to TAing on the things that we've agreed on, or what would you like to do?
With 2 minutes left, I'd like to go back and look at the things that we've agreed on and talk to our team. The retirement incentive, quite honestly, to not agree on a retirement incentive is that's a sticking point for us. So.
Well, listen, it's a big deal for us too, because we want all of our people to be able to enjoy the retirement incentive, but it has to be reasonable, and it can't just be a pittance.
Okay.
Do you want 2 minutes?
No. Are you saying then that we are not coming back to the table? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't, Tracy, you can chime in here too. I just don't see the benefit of continuing to meet. So at this point, I think that we've reached an impasse. I don't see how we move this forward. I mean, we've met for more than a month, and I stopped calculating the number of hours because I knew that wasn't really something that was appreciated, but it's well over 30 hours. We can't continue to do this, or it's not moving the needle in the direction that we need to go. And I'm sorry that it's troubling that we couldn't reach agreement on some very basic and fundamental issues in order to reopen our schools. But what we'd like to request is that we just move this forward now to the board, let the board make the decision for expediency's sake. I don't feel we need to go through a mediator. I think that's just going to continue to delay the process. What I'd like to do is ask the 5 members of the school board to take this up and to make the decision on what they think is best for the employees and the students of this district.
Okay, we understand.
Okay, making sure. Yep. All right. Well, then that is, I guess that's it, right?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And you'll send those documents, correct?
Just did.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Breakout room.